5:30 p.m. Monday, January 25th, 2021. I'm calling this meeting of the City Council of Paris, Texas to order. The first will be the invocation by Mr. Gene Anderson, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Ms. Portugal. Everyone stand, please.
May we pray? Heavenly Father, first of all, we want to thank you for your every blessing, Father, because every good and perfect gift comes from you. And Father, we especially want to remember tonight the family of Tommy Harris, a city employee who passed away this past week. Father, that you would comfort them and guide and direct them, Father, in these difficult days to come. And Father, we pray for our council tonight, that you would give them leadership, also wisdom and understanding to conduct the city business. And Father, we pray that all that we do tonight would honor and glorify you. For we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is Citizens Forum. Persons desiring to address the council must limit their presentation to no more than 2 minutes unless an item is posted on the agenda. The Texas Open Meetings Act prohibits the council from responding to any comments other than to refer the matter to a future agenda, to an existing policy, or to a staff person with specific factual information. Claims against the city, council members, or employees, as well as individual personal appeals, are not appropriate for the Citizens Forum. The Citizens Forum is now open. Anyone wishing to address the council, please step up and give us your name and address. You'll have at least 2 minutes.
Let me take this thing off here. My name is Kelly Collins. I reside over on the west side of town, 1720 West Houston. And what I'm coming in here to ask the council today is for a variance on my container, which I had bought before they have changed the ruling. I've been on that side of town for 32 years, and I take care of things, been taking care of lots around me. But it's hard to say that the law is able to handle that side of town and take care of things. So I bought this container so I can keep my stuff locked up. I have a lot of equipment and stuff that I put into it, and I lock it up. I've had things that walked off before, and there was no way to retrieve it. Even if you have the law, go look for it, it has not been found. So I find having this container really helps me out. And so that's one of the main things, but I'd just like to have a variance on it. And whatever the council says on it, I'm hoping that they'll do that for me. If I have to put up a fence around it, I've been wanting to put up a privacy fence around it, whatever, around my yard anyhow. So whatever it takes to get this approved, that's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Path, could you direct him to the appropriate procedure for getting a variance? Thank you.
My name is Heath Nutt Johnson. I live on the west side of town at 2315 West Sherman Street. I don't know if you're aware or not, but a KKK church meeting has been planned for October in Paris, Texas. That's right, our Paris, Texas. It's made the rounds on their website and our own social media. I've been a proud member of this community my entire existence, and this makes me sick. My grandfather would be even sicker. He served Lamar County folks for 27 years, no matter the color of their skin. They, the KKK, has somehow been emboldened, but y'all, the council, have the unique opportunity to get in front of it, to show our African American community and the world that you care, to get away from the reputation that Paris, Texas has. In fact, the first thing, I have several friends that live off, and the first thing they said was, that's racist, Paris, Texas. But to show that you really want to grow, be the inclusive community we all want. Now, I know freedom of speech is freedom of speech. I don't need a city lawyer to tell me that. But what y'all can do, and most of the time it's for some recognition of someone. I know because I was a member at PJC when the basketball team went to the national finals, and the mayor at the time wrote a resolution thanking us and everything. Anyways, but it's to make a declaration of sorts that y'all as the council declare that even though they are coming here, we do not stand for nor condone hate speech or racism of any kind, not in Paris, Texas. Dr. King once said, "The time is always right to do what is right." Well, council, now is that time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to address the council? Seeing none, I will close the citizens forum. Next is consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any council member wishes to pull for any additional discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
I move we accept the consent agenda.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Thank you. First item on the, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Portugal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have some guests from out of town with Suddenlink, and they're down on item 17, and I'd like to ask the council to move that up before 15.
You make a motion for that, to that effect? Okay, and I'll second it.
Thank you.
All in favor of moving item number 17 up? Okay, thank you. So next is item number 17, discuss and provide direction to city staff with regard to Suddenlink's service. Ms. Portugal, did you want to discuss this?
I will. Thank you very much. When this started, it was because in the 4 years almost that I've been on the council, I've received more complaints from constituents about our cable and internet service than any other item. So I had a particularly moving story from a constituent last week, and I decided it was time to see what the city could do. And I got in touch with State Representative Van Dever's office, his chief of staff, located a governmental affairs director with Suddenlink, and he contacted me very quickly, and in fact has made the trip here tonight from the Metroplex, as well as the regional vice president, Mr. Mike Petty. And so I think we have some attention now, and I want to point out that I have received countless emails and handwritten notes from people all over town, not just in my district. And it's some very moving stories, and some of them have been going on for much longer than the new company, Altice, has taken ownership of Suddenlink. But I would like for us to say we don't want to settle for anything less than our local office being reopened. Sulphur Springs and Mount Pleasant, as I understand it, have been closed, and we are sort of right in the middle of those two communities. So if they didn't open those two, they could open this, and it's at least a doable drive. One of my constituents in his 80s needs a new remote control, and when he finally got in touch with somebody, they said, well, just take it to your local office. He said, it's closed. They said, well, take it to Mount Pleasant or Sulphur Springs. When he told them they were closed, they said, well, go to Abilene or Amarillo. If you've ever driven to Amarillo, it is forever. I think it's closer to Chicago from here than Amarillo is. But that is not reasonable to ask of anybody, but particularly our elderly. So I have made, or Ms. Ellis has made copies of these that I've given to the Suddenlink gentleman. Many stories, and I've used an inkjet printer that's now on empty for this, so there may be more when I get home that I can print. But they are moving stories. One clever constituent said that Suddenlink should take the word communications out of their title because they don't communicate. And I think many of us in the audience and those at home have had those experiences where you're just so frustrated that you cannot get in touch with a person, especially now that our local office is closed. I would like at this time, unless the council is anybody have a comment they'd like to make?
I just have one comment for Mr. Anderson. I know we were trying to get that PEG fee and you never could find another human to speak to, have you had any luck finding out how we can stop collecting this PEG fee? You'll get on the microphone so people can hear you.
I was speaking to Mr. Moyer a while ago, who's here tonight, and he said he could help me with that.
Okay.
So I'll be emailing him in the morning with what we want to do.
Because that's been a problem for the city. We've been trying to get in touch with someone at Suddenlink to stop collecting a fee that we don't want to collect anymore. And to my knowledge, we're still collecting. It's been months since we brought that up. Is that correct?
That's
So
correct.
just one more thing to add on to it. Okay, thank you. That's all I got.
Mayor Pro Tem, I do have Mr. Collins here from my district, if you would like to hear him say a
If
few words
if he
about
would
it.
like to speak?
Yeah, come on up.
Yes, Mr. Collins.
I appreciate you all letting me talk again here. Let me tell you, I'm upset at Suddenlink, and I can't say a whole lot more, but yesterday I had the technician there, and they hung up on me 4 different times, 4 different people. I've been complaining about my internet for 6 weeks at least, and on and off all year. If it rains, my internet goes down. My latency will be up around 30, 27. My download speed the other day was 2.2. My upload was 2.4. And I've complained. I've had the technician, he come out and said, well, Squirrel ate your line. So they replaced all that. And then we hook it back up, and their modem was still acting up. So they said, well, you need to get a new modem. I said, this is your modem. If you guys bring me one, you want to charge me $60 to come out and replace what I have. I'll just go to Walmart and get one of their modems. And they said, well, that'll save you some money. So that's fine. Went and bought another modem, set it in, everything came up, and then all of a sudden it was acting up again. When the wind blows, the rain comes, I wasn't able to connect up. And so I had a technician come last Friday. He was supposed to be there between 8 and 11 o'clock. He never showed up. He calls home office and says, well, nobody's home. He says, well, let's close the business. So I called back up and I said, where's your technician at? Because I was sitting on the porch between the porch and the kitchen looking out the window. He never showed up. The man that finally showed up is the one they sent back out to go out and finish the job he was supposed to do. He came out. He looked at his phone and done a little test, and he says, well, your computer's slow. My computer has nothing to do with the latency and the speed of the system. So I was told to buy Fing. It's a deal that analyzes what your connection speed is. Well, when I first plugged it up, when I had good service for a few minutes, it turned green. Other than that, it stays red and does not give me the right speed. If you check speed of me on your internet, it'll show a graphics chart that goes up and drops all the way to 0 several times. It doesn't do like it used to do and have a high arc. And I pay for 100 megabytes per second. Used to pay for 150. They told me, well, you're not getting your service there. Well, go ahead and drop it down to 100. That way you're getting what you pay for. Then I wasn't getting 50. Now I'm not getting 30. So where does it stop? And I'd like to, like I told the man the other day, I'd like to get some money back on this, because here I am paying you guys $150 a month, but I'm not getting the service that I deserve. So I appreciate you letting me
thanks, sir.
talk.
Yes, thank you.
Well, not to beat the dead horse, but, we get this is the issue that I've heard and I've experienced myself. We get tons of phone calls from Suddenlink offering us packages and especially about the internet, the usage. And they will offer you a package to cut down on the usage fees and all of that. They'll say, hey, we'll give you this one rate and you pay this rate and this will be your set rate, but it's usually $20 to $40 more when you actually get the bill. So we're getting tons of phone calls offering us packages, but when we call them, you don't get that same response. You don't get, sometimes you have to sit on the phone for 45 minutes waiting for someone to help you. So it's like they'll call you, bothering you all the time, but when you call them, you don't get that same, response. So that's one of the issues, just to add on top of it.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Well, we have no Suddenlink issues because we canceled our Suddenlink and we went to DirecTV and we canceled DirecTV, so now we just stream everything. So I can't comment on this because we don't have Suddenlink. We quit them years ago because of the same thing.
Well, that sends a message too.
Yeah.
So who's going to talk?
Mr. Pilgrim? Yeah. Okay. If Mr. Petty and Mr. Moyers would like to come up and address the audience?
Thank you for inviting us, and I appreciate what all of the comments. Johnny Moyer here is the person that when you get any kind of escalation that comes to you, you should funnel that to Johnny, and then he will take that and get the right group together. So we shouldn't be sitting on any kind of issues, and I understand if you didn't know that hopefully today you understand that you have a way to get those issues resolved. Okay?
Well, and I understand that, but, every city that is in your region is listed on the internet, and it looks to me like governmental affairs would contact city and give their contact information so that they could be reached.
Understand, and we do that. I don't know why you don't have that information, so I'm glad that you have it now.
We are too.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Petty.
you bet. As far as let me address the call center and the experience there. So we have done a number of things to get better at that piece. So just like you, and having to deal with COVID, we had the same issues with staffing a call center. We have had long waits in the past, but over the last couple of months, we have hired 453 additional heads in our call center. So we have more staff, and our wait times are not 45 minutes; they are 10 seconds. I pulled the report this morning to understand where are we, and we're at 10 seconds or less on answering the call. So we've addressed that aspect of the business.
Can you address the matter of reopening our Paris office?
Yes, I can address it in that we have no plans to do that. That's just a function of the number of transactions doesn't justify the existence of a store.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I wish I could have a store in every one of our towns, but we don't have that. And as a result of COVID, we closed initially from a safety of our customers as well as our employees, and then doing the evaluation of which ones would reopen. It just didn't make sense to do that.
Okay. Well, after you two, we'll have our city attorney speak and give us some alternatives of where we go next.
Okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Harris, you have done a lot of work on this, research of what our choices are.
I have, although I can't say that I've done anything that is close to affecting any kind of change as what you've done, Ms. Portugal. But I have done some research. As you know, I think that we no longer have a franchise agreement with Suddenlink or Altice that's governed by state law now. So we don't have anything that we can point to in an agreement to hold anybody's feet to the fire. In terms of rates, the PUC, Public Utilities Commission in Austin, is in charge of regulating that. I did some poking around on the internet as well and found that cable services themselves, and probably internet, is governed by the regulations through the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, and I've got information for consumers about filing complaints with the FCC They're called informal complaints, and I don't know what you have to do to make a formal one, but that's the form they have on their website. So in terms of, is there anything locally we can specifically do? No. If you want us to help facilitate consumers, we can do that. I don't think we want to be a call center for consumer complaints, but certainly I've got some paperwork that I could direct people to.
Is that something that we could direct staff to make available to citizens, just maybe the way, like they do voter registration cards or something? I mean, if it's available or...
Could we put on the website maybe a link to the appropriate place to file a complaint? That's something we could do probably.
We probably could. And I have a complaint form that if anybody wanted to email me directly, I could email it to them, assuming they've got good internet service. They can get the email over. But I'll be happy to do that.
Okay. Any further discussion on this?
I have
Go
one
ahead.
more
Yes, go
thing.
ahead.
I did speak with an attorney today who works specifically with utilities and cable companies, and she is searching for a contact at the PUC in Austin that is somebody we could also direct complaints to. And she did tell me that Suddenlink's late fee is the highest in Texas that she's aware of, and a late fee is supposed to be charged to cover the cost of sending a second bill. Well, if you've ever had a late bill with them, which I haven't, but some of my constituents due to the post office situation, they don't get a second bill. They're charged the next month for 2 months' bills. So that's something we can address with the FCC or PUC or both.
And if you'll get me that information for the PUC contact,
Okay.
I'll put that in my list of things in our arsenal.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Say over there.
I'm sorry, did somebody else? Yes, sir. Come on up, you have something to address.
I just want to clarify, we don't charge another month of fee. It's a $5 fee for if you're late with your payment, $5. It is not double, it's not triple, it's not whatever else. I just want to clarify that we have a $5 late fee.
Well,
If you don't pay your bill, then it would be double because you would have to pay
Yes,
the bill plus the new one.
they paid their bill, but the checks have passed in the mail, perhaps.
Sure, so in the new bill, we don't know that they have paid, right? And so it may appear on the bill like they have 2 months of service that they owe. But it's a $5 late fee.
Well, and that was one of the attorney's suggestions, is that if people are willing to make a copy of their bill to show how it varies from 1 month to the next. It's never a consistent amount, and there's no explanation why your bill's gone up and down, up and down.
Well, there's lots of usage issues that come on the bill. So if someone orders a movie, or if someone goes over their data limit, there's all kinds of things that affect the bill.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Okay?
Petty.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, any other discussion on this? If not, we'll move on to item number 15, discuss and act on how to expend the City of Paris's allocation of coronavirus relief funding from the Texas Department of Emergency Management. Mr. Path.
All right, this is a follow-up item from a few meetings we've had in the past. Get a little bit of history here. June 8th, City Council authorized a resolution to receive the CARES Act funding, about almost $1.4 million for COVID-19 relief to help cover city expenses for the COVID-19 situation. That was $55 per capita is what that was based off of. On December 14th, I approached the council about how to go about expending the funding. We were going to receive all of our allocation. We've only spent a portion of that on COVID-19 expenses, and so we were looking at ideas of how to expend the rest of it. So we should be receiving our entire allotment. The law changed, allowing us to be able to identify all of our first responder payroll in order to get the full $1.4 million. So we have done that. Talking to our third-party administrator, we are in like the sixth and final step of approval. I hope there's no more steps. 6 is enough to me, and but that's where we're at in this process here. And so from that discussion in December, we were looking at ways of how to utilize the remainder of that funding. My thought at the time was perhaps we can use it to make some purchases on some disaster-related equipment, things to help prepare ourselves for the next disaster, whether it be another virus or a tornado or a hailstorm or something like that, just generators, new pumps, some particular stretcher equipment for EMS, just things that are high dollar that we usually can't budget for because they are so expensive, but since we have the money, we can go for with that. The City Council asked that I go back and look at how much we have spent that is COVID-19 related this last year. So I went back and looked at that, and now obviously we didn't catch every little thing as departments were busy doing their jobs. Some things didn't quite make all the counts, but I think those are de minimis. So the numbers I have here, we have spent approximately, let me skip ahead to this, we spent about $515,000 in just overall things. That includes like the testing kits, masks, sanitizing wipes. That includes the FFCRA leave that we've had for this last year that the council authorized an extension of this last meeting. We had a ventilator in there for our EMS vehicles. So that's all that comes together, about $515,000 in total for that. Now we have some commitments ahead of us still. We are assisting the health district with some funding. The city council authorized $100,000 to go towards that. We've given them about half of that so far. So we have that coming up. We also are assisting the Paris ISD, Chisholm ISD, and North Lamar ISD with some funding. And I'll give you the round numbers. I'm sorry. The total expenses today is $346,000, including the commitments is $515,000. So we spent about $347,000 is what we spent so far to date. That's as of December 31st, roughly. And then $515,000 is including all of our commitments as well. So that's got the numbers mixed around there. So with all that said, I got to thinking more about what I want to recommend to you tonight. Since that last meeting in January here, the mayor pro tem, myself, emergency management, we've worked with the health district to start a call center for COVID-19. We're also helping. We also extended the FFCRA pay for the employees for that. We're going to assist the health district with an additional portion of the $100,000. So just a lot. We're not out of the woods yet, and so I don't have a solid recommendation for you tonight. Again, back in December, I was thinking that we might again, since our budget last year covered the expenditures without going over budget, I thought we can utilize the entire portion to go towards expenditures. But again, we want to reimburse ourselves part of that expense. I'd recommend that we maybe look at this 6 months from now. And then revisit it. Another option is to maybe pull aside about $400,000 or so. I just kind of pulled that number out to maybe start buying some equipment. I did ask our department heads for a list of ideas of what they would like to purchase. Primarily utilities, EMS, and fire. They're the ones that have the most disaster-related equipment needs of all of our departments. And so that totals about $575,000 in total wish list. And obviously that's a large number there. But again, these are things like stretchers, generators, emergency pumps for our stations and so forth, things that would be very nice to have in case of a disaster, whether a tornado or a hailstorm or whatever it could be like that. So, but with that said, we could revisit this in 6 months, having 6 more months of COVID-19 expenditures under our belt by that point, FFCRA expenditures, wipes, spray, those kind of things. Or we could set aside a portion of that, or we also could set aside a large amount and start buying equipment here. So I don't have a good recommendation for you tonight. I just want to give you the facts there, and we can talk about it. So.
Okay. And what the expenditures we have coming that you didn't mention, I guess, would be if we set up the regional vaccination distribution center, which I know is in the works, assuming we get vaccine.
Yeah.
But that will be some expense. I didn't hear, unless, or is that?
Possibly, yeah. We're using a lot of volunteers, and
Okay.
also we're using a lot of our current staffing, paramedics. So there's not a lot of added expense, but we don't know yet. And so this is all recent stuff. We're acting on it as we speak. So there's always the potential we could have some expenditures on that.
My feeling is it won't be, probably in 3 months, we'll probably have a real good grip on where we're going when the vaccine's out and we're starting to see this thing taper off. We might have a real good, I don't think it'll take 6 months, but my inclination would be to address it in a future meeting,
Yeah.
Possibly even sooner than 6 months.
Sure.
And also to make sure that the people, one question I had, one of the things we always get around this area, Mr. Path, is ice storms, and the branches fall on the power lines and the first responders and the people have a hard time getting all the brush off the streets. Those are the types of disasters we get here. Mr. Chief, is there anything that would help us for clearing off for that type of a disaster? That and tornadoes, which can have similar effects. But that's the biggest disasters we've seen here in Paris. But is there some equipment that you need that would help you get us back on board when we have one of these disasters?
Basically, on disasters such as ice storms, what we do is we contract with debris removal companies.
Okay.
And bring them in and have them remove the debris from the streets. One thing that I've talked to the city manager about and we're going to be working on in the future is something we call a pre-event debris removal contract, that we can put a contract in place and have it ready to go in the event something like this happens. But we spent, I think the last ice storm, we spent a considerable amount of money removing debris.
Yeah.
And of course that will be an issue for us if that ever happens again. But we would spend quite a bit on that.
Anybody on the council have any comments or discussion? I'll open it up to the council here. Anybody?
I just think that waiting for a couple more months to kind of see where we are and where this is going, I think would be prudent.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely, if the goal is to reimburse ourselves for expenditures, I definitely would advise waiting a few more months to see what comes of this, and because this 346 is going to increase in the next few months, and so. Yeah.
So that's certainly my feeling, is to postpone this decision for maybe 3 months.
Yeah.
And then see where we are and maybe come back to us in 3 months and maybe this thing will be sorted out by then.
Yeah, by that point, we will have gone through our FFCRA extension, and so we'll need to revisit that at that point in any ways, and so that could be a good time to revisit this also. So I can kind of put the two together for a future April or whenever we're looking at that, so.
Okay, is that the council's consensus?
Sounds
Okay.
good to me.
All right, okay, thank you, Mr. Path, appreciate it. Next is item number 16, receive a presentation with regard to the wastewater treatment plant project, amendment to the engineering agreement, the long-term financing options, and rate adjustments.
All right, tonight I have with me, of course, Doug Harris, Utility Director, Gene Anderson, Finance Director, as well as representatives from Garver. Lance and Jeff are here with us tonight, and so I'm going to be tag teaming with them tonight. This is a very big item, and so I wanted to bring their expertise involved in this here. So we have a slideshow here, and I'll try to adhere to it as best as I can. I don't do slideshows very well, so they actually created it, and I'm trying to follow it. So, but we'll follow on with that. But this is, of course, our wastewater treatment plant. As you all know, we need to replace. We're in need of replacing this, and so a little bit of background here. As you know, for years now, our plant's been aging and aging. It's a World War II era plant, and so June 10, 2019, City Council contracted with Garver to design the plant, to do some conceptual designs for the facility. And then this last year in 2020, they brought back to you a comprehensive update on the process, where we're at, how to design this, what needs to happen with that. And so City Council at the time, on July 27th, they authorized us to sign an amendment to the Garver agreement to proceed with designing, but condition on figuring out the long-term financing piece of that. And so obviously we were worried about cash flow, and we want to make sure that we can obviously pay our bills when Garver has expenditures with that. So the time, which was a very wise decision, to hold off on that. At the time, we were hoping to get a TWDB loan for this project, and it was very low interest. At the time, it was zero at the time, and COVID was playing into that, and so we were trying to pursue that. And so, but again, before I signed that contract, it was critical that we figure out the financing of this so that we can pay our bills with that. So with that, given TWDB loans are out there, we also had certificate of obligation options there. So tonight, the goal here is to kind of give you an update on how TWDB ended up. We worked on that for months with this, and so I'm going to turn over to Garver here in a second to explain to you what happened with TWDB, the loan options there. We're going to talk about next steps from that, given that did not work out, about how to finance this long term, including how we went about phasing the bond for this project here, proposal for tonight. Then the most important piece of this, the rate adjustment. And so as we knew, looking at this project being $70+ million, whether it was a loan or the bond, we would have to be increasing rates in order to account for that expenditure. So we knew this has been coming up here. So the goal tonight, there's no action item tonight, but my goal here is at the end of this is to get some direction so that the next meeting I can bring back to you documents for one direction or another for this process here. So I'm going to turn over to Garver now to discuss how the TWDB loan happened for that. So,
hi, I'm Lance Clement with Garver. I manage the funding application for the wastewater treatment plant and all of the TWDB funding coordination. So the TWDB funding process is significantly behind schedule. I'll show you on the slide what a typical outline looks like, a typical schedule. For the Water Development Board, we would begin project solicitation where we identify the project, what all is included in the scope of work, and the associated costs for the construction of the project in the December to March timeframe. We were on track with that schedule. We submitted it just prior to the March 1st timeline. Next, TWDB then typically goes through a rating and ranking process through the spring timeframe, followed by a draft intended use plan, or IUP. This is typically issued in a May to June timeframe. It allows public comment periods from June to July, and then they adopt the final IUP in August. Now that's a typical year, and that would reflect the final project list being set in the August timeframe. This is the timeline that we were originally working with. However, due primarily to two main issues, TWDB is significantly behind schedule. One is the amount of loan applications. So because the funding rates were so low, they experienced significant amounts of loan applications from interested parties. And secondly, through the coronavirus pandemic, they have had difficulties in maintaining high staff levels and maintaining high responsiveness. So I mentioned they were behind schedule. The draft IUP was completed in September. It was updated in December, and when they issued it in September, Paris ranked 90th out of 99 projects. I mentioned that there was significant interest in the program, and that definitely played out with the available list of projects that had applied for funding. And there was a total of $1.2 billion in project funds requested total. So following this massive request for funding from interested parties, TWDB re-engaged their own internal leadership and issued another draft IUP in December of 2020. Prior to them issuing that, we began preparing the application packet for a December loan invitation. So when that September IUP was issued, we felt that the best chance we could get for available loan funding was to have our application ready to go when that loan application request went out in December. So working with your city staff, we began preparing that loan application, fully intending to submit in December. However, as I alluded to, they drastically updated their program requirements in November of 2020 and reissued the draft IUP in December. The adjustments that they made greatly reduced the available funding. They reduced the zero-interest loan amounts that were available for project funds. TWDB also suspended the multi-year commitments for wastewater treatment plant project funding, which is what we were currently pursuing with the wastewater treatment plant, and they capped individual projects to $44 million. And so with the total program cost of this project being above $60 million, they would ultimately cap any available funds to $44 million for this project if we were to even qualify for those funds. Because of our current listing on the draft ranking, as well as these mandates, changes that the Water Development Board had made to their program funds, we determined that this was not a viable option for the current project.
Well, that's when the staff stepped back in a little bit here again, because when the loan didn't work out, again, we were pursuing that because it was 0% interest at the time, which would have been great to have achieved if we could have. And so, but all those changes they made were fatal to our project, as each one of them just killed it on its own with that. So with that, again, given the project is vital for us to complete, we did go to work working with Garver, working with our financial advisors, working with our rate consultants, and then working with our bond counsel to look at other options for this. Now, the other option we have is certificates of obligation. I'm just going to say bonding, because it's easier for me to say, bonding, and so, and to fund this project here. And so with this, the whole time, we wanted to keep in mind, get the project done, but how do we do it in such a way to soften the impact of the ratepayers? How do we work our way into that over the whole process here, whether it was the loan or whether it was the bond? And so we kept that in mind over the several months we worked on this option here to try to give you options tonight to help soften that over the next few years. And so looking at certificates of obligation or bonding here, again, since the loan's not an option, we had to go to this other traditional route to fund this here. Now, working with our bond counsel, we learned that given the size of our project, IRS regulations limit how much we can take out in a bond at any one time. And so they say you have to spend at least 5% of your note within the first 6 months and 85% within the first 3 years. Now, working with Garver, our engineering firm here, this is about a 5 to 7 year project. There is no way we can spend $60 or $70 million, 85% within the first 3 years. So we're looking at a two bond. A minimum of 2 bond phasing option here, about $46 million up front, in order to get the project off the ground, design it, and get through phase 1 of this project here, and then have about an 18 plus million so to finish it off in about 3 years. Now, again, these are estimates that will be determined once we bid the project here in the end here. So, and there could be some true up along the way we have to do for bonding here, because again, it's all based off bids. And so, so again, the nice thing about this route here, it has a natural softening into the project here. If we got the full $70 million up front, that's a big debt payment we have to start paying. Having a $46 million one, it's a smaller debt payment here. So that had a natural first soften phasing into this here. So that's part of our phasing route we have in this whole project here. So with that, we designed that bond off of Garver's recommendations, how we can split the project up. I'm going to turn it back over to Lance here to explain how we're going to go how we're going to split between phase 1 and phase 2 here. So
our ultimate goal with the phasing then became, what immediate improvements could we implement with the construction project, still allow the plant to be fully functional through the construction, and ultimately meet your overall project goals. So with the first phase, the ultimate goal of the first phase is to provide the necessary treatment capacity through new aeration basins and a blower building. We're implementing a new RASWAS pump station and a new final clarifier, along with a new influent pipeline and influent pump station and headworks. So a majority of the new construction will occur with the first phase and set the stage for the plant to operate off that new construction leading into the second phase. The second phase focuses primarily on ancillary facilities and rehabilitating the existing facilities that will still maintain being active, such as the final clarifier rehabilitation, sludge holding tank rehabilitation, and the chlorine contact basin rehab. We're also implementing new primary clarifiers that will greatly improve the process performance leading on beyond phase 2. So we set this with the overall goal of the budget in mind, first and foremost, and then ensuring that the plant maintained operations and did not lose any operational capacity through the construction of the treatment plant. This process will take almost 7 years to complete. So currently, Grayson will talk more to the bond funding moving forward, but if we look at a May 2021 notice to proceed, we anticipate completing the design by June 2022. That would then allow a construction notice to proceed in August of next year, with Phase 1 construction being complete. At the time of Phase 1 construction being complete, the second phase of funding would occur, and we would proceed into Phase 2 of construction in October 2024, with a final completion anticipated currently for May 2026. Now, these timelines will be adjusted as we go through the actual design and the design components and what's included in Phase 1 versus what's included in Phase 2. But we believe that this is a very viable option to achieve the funding timeline commitments that Grayson mentioned on the previous slide.
Could you all lift the microphone just a little higher? Thank you.
Hopefully it'll stay there. So again, with that, given IRS dictates how much we can and cannot issue at any one time, again, that had the natural phasing here for the bonding part of it, which does help our goal here of trying to soften the impact of the ratepayers up front. But with that, obviously, we'd have to amend the proposed contract with Garver. The contract right now, as written, is design it and bid it all in one package. But you can't bid a $67 million project and only have $46 million to go towards that. So that's why we have to do the natural Phase 1, Phase 2. So we would have to amend the Garver contract as drafted to do a Phase 1, Phase 2 bid package part of this process here. So if we proceed with this, we would work with Garver to bring that back to you for that phasing right there. So with this, let's see here. Where I want to go next with this here. So with this, one of the parts with the bond here is working with our bond counsel, again, trying to keep in mind phasing and softening the impact of the ratepayers. We looked at how do we, even with $46 million for a bond, there's still a large upfront increase we'd have to look at here. So working with bond counsel, we have developed a strategy to try to shift back the principal payments to later in the bond, so that we would have just mostly interest payments the first few times. That is a smaller payment to begin with, thus less of an increase we have to raise in rates in order to account for that. So that does allow for us to have a little bit of more of a phasing into the process here. So now that does add some cost to the overall project, but looking at 30 years of payment here, it's only about $3 million more over 30 years. And over $100 million principal interest there, that's kind of, in our opinion, that's de minimis. And so to hit the goal of softening the ramp up for the rates, we do recommend that we shift back the principal payments to later in so we can, again, phase in, ramp up those payments a little softer with that. So with that, the most critical part of this is the rate adjustment, and that's what we've been getting to for this last several months. The part that we have to discuss ultimately is how to pay for this. Yes, bonds pay for the cost, but we have to pay the bonds off. And so, working with our rate consultant here, we have a rate maintenance policy, and the way that works, as I keep it in my mind, is we try to have a rate that's about 1.1 to 1. What that basically means is for every $1 expense, we raise $1.10 in revenue. Now, the reason behind that is it's more to it than this, but the reason behind that is water and sewer are volatile rates. It's not a guaranteed rate. It's not like taxes to where like property where we know we're going to get this. It's based off of usage. It's based off water loss. It's based off drought, rainy seasons. So you never quite know. But you still have to treat. You still have to treat water. You still have to pay employees to service the plant. You still have to run the equipment to cycle things through. So you have some fixed costs that are there whether you have a dry season or a wet season. So you plan on a 1.1 to 1. Again, like a 110% to 100% ratio there to try to account for those volatility there. At times you dip below 1, at times you go above 1.1. Again, to set a rate at less than 1 means to knowingly deplete the reserve. which that's always an option. But when you look, but we're looking at 5 to 6, 7 years of doing that. That starts to get a little hairy. And to knowingly deplete your reserves every year for 5 or 7 years. And so what we did to help, again, try to give the council some options here is we've given you 3 options that will maintain a 1-to-1 ratio, not 1.1 to 1, because that's a little bit higher of a rate. We can do that if you want to, but at least a 1-to-1 gets us break even in overall, without eating the reserves, and eventually will get us to the 1.1 in time, over about 5 to 7 years. So with this, we have 3 options here. I'm going to turn over to Gina in a second here. We have 3 options to try to get us to the 1.1 to 1 in 7 years or so, but softly get there at a 1-to-1 ratio, if that makes sense. So I'm going to turn over to Gene here. We have 3 rate options here that we've worked with our new Gen consultant, Chris Eckert, for, and I'll let Gene explain these here for you.
Well, as Grayson said, the impact on our customers was very big in our mind. And Grayson's already mentioned several things that we did, delaying those early principal payments, going to this 1-to-1 ratio in terms of setting the rates during this interim period. Obviously, we didn't even consider just one rate, everything up front. And the 2 issues, CO issues instead of 1, which we needed to do, for IRS reasons, also helped that. But the proposals that you see before us, the different options, are multi-year increases. And the purpose of that is, of course, is to ease into where we ultimately need to be. And we've got 3 options here that allow us to maintain at least a 1-to-1 ratio, assuming that we hit all of our targets for sales and that sort of thing. Option 1 there is a 2 increase option, where the first increase would go into effect in April of this year, and the rate would stay the same until we get to October of 2023, in which case we'd have a second increase. The 3 increase option there in the center column, we'd have an initial increase in the rate in April this year of 23%, then in October of 22, another increase, and in October of 24, a third and final increase. And then the last option in the right-hand column is to go on a semi-annual basis, have a rate increase essentially every 6 months. That would be a total of 11 increases between now and 2026. And of course, the 2-step option gives us, from just looking from the city's point of view, gives us the most financial stability because we're getting more money quicker. And it's going to make it easier for us to hit that 1-to-1 ratio if we had a big jump up front. The second option gives a softer rate increase, and that's why we wanted to mention it, but it's not quite as financially secure as doing it the other way. And then the third option, it's the least, gives us the least stability, but it's the easiest phase-in option. It's the one that will probably be the most palatable, to the consumer. If you turn over or go to the next slide, we've gone in and kind of calculated what in dollars and cents, because that's what it comes down to, is dollars and cents, how that would impact. Just for your reference point, the average residential consumption over the last 5 years has been 4,184 gallons a month, okay? And so you can kind of have that as a reference point. So if we run through these 3 different options, on the left there is the 2 increase option, and we figured the amount of increase for 3 different levels of consumption: 2,000 gallons, 5,000 gallons, and 8,000 gallons a month. The 2,000 gallon is a little more than what our lowest typical users are. If you take an older couple, man and just his wife, elderly, they normally will do about 1,500 gallons a month, is pretty typical for them. Just to kind of give you a reference point, but in the 2,000 gallon column, using the 2 increase option, the dollar increase in the sewer bill per month, starting in April, would be $6.24 a month. And then that rate would not change again until we get to October of 2023, and there would be another $5.72 increase per month, and that would be the last increase. But in total there, if you look at the bottom of that first column, there's $11.96 more than what the current monthly amount of their bill would be for sewer. If you go to the next column, 5,000 cubic feet, which is a little more than what the average residential consumption is. The initial dollar increase in April of this year would be $15.50, followed by $14.22 in October of '23, for a total of $29.72 by the time we get to April of 2026. Then the 8,000 gallon, and I don't know anybody residentially that uses 8,000 gallons unless they've got the prettiest putting green in their backyard or they got a leak. Just those are about the only 2 ways you're going to get 8,000 gallons. But just for a reference point, the first April 21 increase would be $30.93. Then in October 23, $28.38 for a total of $59.31 through April 2026. The 3 increase option is there in the center, 2,000 gallons. The first increase would be $4.29 a month, followed by October 22, which would be $4.13, and then in October 2024 would be another $3.64 for a total of $12.06 for a 2,000 gallon user. 5,000 gallon user, $10.66 for the first increase, $10.26 for the second, and $9.06 for the third, and those would total up $29.98. The $8,000 gallon consumer, $21.28 for the first one, $20.48 for the second, and $18.08 for the third, for a total of $59.84. The semi-annual increase option, of course, there's something every 6 months there, but they're much smaller increases. And like I say, this is the one that'd probably be most palatable to the consumer because they don't get really any big spikes in it. But starting in April 2021, for a 2,000 gallon consumer, their bill would go up $1.59 the first time, $1.72 6 months later, $1.86 6 months later, 89 cents 6 months after that, 93 cents 6 months after that, 96 cents 6 months after that, and so forth to $1, $1.17, $1.22, $1.27, and $1.33, which total up $13.94. Okay, I'll make sure you weren't going to say something. The $5,000, you know what I do for a living, it's all dollars. 5,000 gallon consumer, it shows the increases per month or every 6 months there, starting with $3.95 and going through $3.29 for the last year, for a total of $34.62. And then the 8,000 gallon imaginary consumer, as I like to think of that one, starts at $7.89 and goes through $6.57 in April of '26 for a total of $69.09.
Gene, could I ask you a question?
Sure.
What's the current typical bill right now that a 2,000 gallon a month user is paying? And what's the typical bill a 5,000 gallon user is paying?
Okay, for a 2,000 gallon consumer, right now they're paying $18.62, and a 5,000 gallon consumer is paying $46.33. So, well, yeah, if you looked at, I don't know, let's look at the third option. what that would end up for a $2,000 or 2,000 gallon consumer who's currently paying $18.62, in 2026 they would be paying $32.56, and a 5,000 gallon consumer paying $46.33 currently would be paying $80.95.
How much was that? It was the new one, they would up for 5,000?
The 5,000 gallon, the new rate would be $80.95.
That's nearly double.
It's 64% more.
So we wanted to give the council some options to consider for this. Again, there's really no easy way to pay for this project here. Obviously, as staff, we'll do everything we possibly can to manage our expenditures, and we'll be working on this next budget year. I think there's some things we can probably do here and there, but ultimately, though, this is a large expense that will require an increase one way or the other, and so. That's the unfortunate news here, but again, I think we've got some good options here to try to cover, trying to phasing it in. And then again, the two option is more financially secure for the city operations, but at the same time, as staff, we feel comfortable with the third option as well. So we worked with our rate consultant. Again, it maintains that 1-to-1 ratio without. Again, with that, when you have the 1-to-1 ratio, there are times we will dip into our reserve. And again, you have the volatility and the rates there. So, but at least we are trying to maintain 1-to-1 and not knowingly dipping in the reserve year after year after year after year after year like that. So eventually that will bite you. So with that, and I'll open questions here, but with that, our goal tonight is to just make some recommendations and get some guidance. Again, we have no action item tonight. We don't have any documents to give you tonight, but it would be my recommendation, staff's recommendation, that we would proceed with a Phase 1 bond of $46 million. We would start that this next meeting. We would bring documents back to you for approval at the February 8th council meeting. Again, to approve the Phase 1 $46 million bond, as well as we would bring back an amendment to the Garver contract to divide between Phase 1, Phase 2 for bidding purposes. Again, because of those IRS regulations that affect the bonding requirements. And we would also recommend one of those three rate options. If you would like to guide us tonight as to option 1, 2, or 3, we are bringing that back to you. And again, a future council is not bound by that. They can always change things, but we can set a roadmap, a course for ourselves at the next meeting here to say, okay, given we have now entered debt, we now owe this debt. This is our plan to pay it off for the next several years, so that future councils see that, hey, you got to pay your debt, and there's no going back from that. But this is our plan to get there, and so there'll be some adjustments over the years because, again, good years, bad years, there'll be some adjustments along the way. But this is our plan going forward with that. So that's so I'd recommend that we would bring documents to the next meeting for the bond, a Garver amendment for the Phase 1, Phase 2, and one of the three rate options for the next meeting here. So,
I have a question. Got a couple questions. So we sell water, right, to other people in
Yes.
the county? Are their water rates going to go up also?
Well, this is wastewater rates. This is be wastewater rates, not water rates.
So no.
Correct. Yeah. It would be no. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then, is all this going to go down? Will the rates go back down once we're finished paying for the new wastewater plant?
I mean, hopefully, yes. I mean, again, we're looking at 30 years from now, and this would be a 30-year note. And so, but yes, in 30 years, it should hopefully go down. So,
Dang.
yeah, it's
Something else.
a lot of
I don't
payments.
think I'll be here for that. I think I'll be. Yeah.
So
that's
hopefully,
it.
30 years from now, your successors will say, yes, bring them down. So,
Hopefully. I'm good, thank you.
Any comments, questions?
I like that 3 increase option better than I do the other two.
the middle option,
Yeah,
the
the
second
middle
one.
one.
Yep. Okay.
I would prefer a faster one, but I think my constituents would appreciate the what is it, the third option
Yeah.
that's easier, because
Yeah,
they're,
yeah, we looked at I even threw out there to the staff, and so can we even do like a month-to-month one? Because that's obviously people would not like the constant month, but cycle-wise, there's no way we could, with notices, the multiple cycles of bills, we cannot do anything less than 6 months and still, and do, so 6 months is as low as we can take it, and administratively do it right.
I'm afraid with that third option, they're gonna feel like it's their Suddenlink bill. It goes up, it jumps
Yeah.
so fast.
At least they can call us here at the office, so.
You need anything from the council on this?
I guess
tonight?
just some guidance on which rate option you'd like to bring back to the next meeting. And again, if this all sounds good overall, I think I'm picking up so far, we got to go forward with this. And, but if you want to kind of give me some guidance on which rate option we can bring back to you, we'll get the document prepared and ordinance for that, but.
I think the third
The
option,
third option, yeah,
the semi-annual, is that what you thought?
semi-annual increase,
yes,
that will be the least
thank you.
sticker
Whoever's
shock.
running the PowerPoint, will you go back to those, to the rate options?
Here, you can look at these.
There we go.
Now, we end up at a permanent higher rate if we go with the option number 3, is that correct?
That's correct, because you're softening it in the initial point, we have to make it up in the end. So in the end, you actually end up at a higher rate to get us back to where we need to be.
So the cost of doing, of phasing it in slowly is the ultimate final bill in 2026 will be significantly higher, looks like about 20% higher, something like that, than it would be if we,
Right, that's where that extra
That's the
$3 million,
trade-off.
of interest comes
Yeah,
in, is
yeah.
by delaying that principal payment.
well, I mean, I'd be in favor of the option number 3 as well, the slow phasing in of it. Otherwise, it's gonna hit people really, really hard. I don't know. What's y'all's opinion on this?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with phasing it in because that would set with, like, say a job like I have, raises over the next 5 years. So it would be a slow impact, even though it would be more at the end. I think less complaints because it's a gradual thing. But if you hit people really hard, y'all know the negative impact of that better than we do.
And hopefully by having this roadmap, I mean, people will, if they take the time, they'll be able to see as it's coming, they'll see the increase is coming by passing an ordinance that has the next several years lined out. So with of course, future council need to adjust it because the bids may come back good. So we may not need as much. And so, but yes.
And there is still some possibility for phase 2 or even the latter part of phase 1 to get the
Yes.
water board loan.
Yeah, our hope is in a couple of years when we need that phase 2, if that loan is still an option and if it's very favorable at the time, we would go after that as well. So.
What about any of the government grant, rural water, small town, opportunity zone? Is there any of that out there? Or we're
Well-
obviously looking for it, I guess.
Yeah, Garver was tasked with looking for those kind of things, and as I made note in my memo, I really do think that unfortunately how we scored on the TWB is a reflection of how we score in other places. Paris, I worked in a lot of communities, and I've lived in a lot of communities, and when you stay in one community, you don't know what's like in other communities. You think it's got to be, no, it can't be worse anywhere else than here. Well, when you start looking at across Texas, across the country, we're not the worst off. And so, in fact, our staff have done such a good job maintaining our facility. It's not on utter collapse, and we have the ability to pay our bills, which is a good thing for us. But there are smaller communities out there that don't have that. So we don't score very well, and but Garver's been looking at that, and it's come up blank so far. But we will keep looking, but so far, no, we've not found anything so far.
Grayson, where do all the other little communities that we sell, we sell our water to them, where do they get their water processed?
We process the water for them. Our water treatment plant processes all water in the county, and then we ship it out through the pipes into the
So
whole
are they
county.
going to be paying more for the services of using our wastewater treatment
No,
plant?
we don't receive their water back, and so is that true, Doug? They don't. Why don't you come speak to about how the wastewater is handled, and so.
To answer your question specifically, the smaller communities around, outside of the CCN, the ETJ, our service area of Paris,
Yes, sir.
they have their own smaller treatment plants.
Oh, okay.
It could be a plant similar to what Paris has on a much smaller scale.
Oh,
It could
okay.
be a ponding system. It could be septic tanks.
I gotcha.
Anything along those lines.
Okay, all right, well, that answers my question. Thank you.
If we ever did a water plant per se, they would get that increase because they receive our water, but we don't receive their wastewater.
Gotcha.
So,
I got you. Thank you.
So each phase has a timeline. What if the timeline isn't met? Are there any penalties for that or extra cost, anything?
no, I mean, when it comes to the IRS and for that part of it, I mean, it's always a gamble. Again, when you have contractors and bids, you never fully know. But that's why when we worked with Garver, they felt comfortable that a $46 million number was we felt comfortable with getting 85% of that one. And so obviously time's of the essence. And so we are actually going to move our Garver contract from 18 months design to 12-month design in order to speed this up a little bit and get this thing out faster. And so we can get the contractors in, get them started, and try to hit the 85% percentile with that. And so, but again, if we hit our penalties, it's just we have to, is it interest payments or how's it, again, I forget that.
Yeah, the biggest thing they look at if we don't meet the schedule is whether or not we've had positive arbitrage. That is, we've made money on the money that we borrowed, because I'll invest that money based on an anticipated expenditure schedule. And if I were to make more money than what we're paying on the bonds, then they don't like that. We have to turn around and pay that money, that excess revenue, to the IRS. That's the primary thing.
So it's not a steep penalty, but still, it's the IRS doesn't want us taking out more than what we can reasonably spend in 3 years. So now there are options for a 5-year thing, but it has very stringent steps to do that, and we just didn't feel comfortable with that 5-year thing. So.
Well, I agree on one thing. We need to get going on this. I know it's a huge project, and I know it's expensive, but I think we need to get rolling on this as soon as possible so that there won't be future councils that might get wet feet on it. I mean, we need to do this.
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
Yeah, it's got to be done. If you all haven't toured it yet, you need to.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to tour the water treatment plant.
Well,
At least
we will
once.
bring some documents back to you on February 8th then. So we'll bring some stuff so we can get this thing going, and once we get those passed, we're off and going. So, very good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for all the work, Garver and our staff.
Okay, item number 18, discuss and possibly authorize the city attorney to file suit for collection of the following debts to the city: Brentwood Terrace Healthcare and Rehab Center, Heritage House of Paris, Legend Healthcare and Rehab, and Stillhouse Rehab and Healthcare Center. Ms. Harris.
This is a short item after these long ones. We have some outstanding invoices from EMS to these different healthcare centers based on transports that Medicare won't pay for. That's mainly a situation where they called us because they didn't have a driver on duty. So I'm trying to work with a couple of them who have responded to a demand letter from me. A couple of them haven't responded at all. If I can work them out, I'll work them out, but I just wanted authorization to file a collection lawsuits against these providers if necessary.
Any questions of Ms. Harris?
People should pay their debts.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm in favor of giving you the authority to file suit should that become necessary.
Correct.
Maybe the threat of the lawsuit will cause them to respond to the
Well, I've
demand.
threatened already, so we're a little closer than that, but.
Okay, well, this
I'm-
is a very public threat, I guess.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any problems with that?
No,
I don't.
I'll entertain a motion then.
Second.
I'll make a motion then that we allow, authorize the city attorney to file suit to collect these debts.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Item number 19, discuss and consider a charter review committee and process for selection.
Okay, at the last council meeting, Ms. Knox wanted to put an item on here to discuss charter review. The last time we had a charter election was in 2011. Prior to that, I believe it was 2007. There are two ways to amend the charter. First of all, let me tell you that you have to take it to a vote. Whether you all decide on charter amendments or whether you decide that you want to appoint a committee to make recommendations. So that's the first thing that you all need to decide is if you want to appoint a charter review commission. In 2011, I believe the council just voted on two propositions that they wanted to have changed. But in 2007, we had a pretty big charter election. There were like 70 propositions, all of them passed. 11 people were appointed to that committee. After talking to Ms. Knox, that's what I would recommend is that you all appoint a committee and let them study it and make recommendations and bring it to you all for consideration whether or not to put it to a vote.
What's the time frame on this, Ms. Ellis? Are we talking about doing that?
I don't see that they could get it to this election. It
Yeah,
would
so
be,
we're looking November.
May of 2022.
May, okay. Would it be the
Yeah.
May election or the November?
Yes, the May election.
2022.
Unless you all wanted to call a special election in
We
November.
couldn't do it at the same time as the, well, I guess we don't have elections. Never.
Yeah,
never-
there's no way that
Yeah.
we could actually, you all could get them appointed. It would not, let me just put it this way, I don't think that they could do a very good job looking at the entire charter and making a recommendation to you. We're going to be we did call the election tonight, so they would have a month to get it ready.
Yeah.
And
So we're looking at
this way, and I've loved what they did in 2007, which when each council member selected someone that they wanted to appoint. And then what each council member did was give a name, and then we drew from those names 4 people, and that's how we ended up with 11. We could bring it back next time. You all could wait until the meeting after that so you can talk to people to see if they're interested or would want to serve, because it's a long commitment. That particular committee worked probably every 2 weeks. They would have a meeting and a 2-hour session. And then they went into the community. They scheduled public hearings at different locations. So it was a long process, but it was very good, very detailed. So you all the first thing you need to decide is if you want to appoint a charter review committee. And if so, how many you want to appoint and the process that you want to use.
It looks to me like the way it was done before, it looks like it worked pretty well. So I think that would be what we should do.
And it's overdue, St. Knox. for
Yeah.
bringing
You cannot have, according to state law, you cannot have a charter election less than every 2 years. Our charter says we need to look at it every 5 years.
So we're already violating our
Yes.
charter. Okay.
It says we should.
There may not be anything that.
Yeah, there may
deemed
not.
To be changed,
No.
but, it's important to always look at it and just see
Makes-
if
I agree
there's something
completely.
that.
I agree
Yeah.
completely.
And then they could make once they get together, they could make a presentation to you all.
Yeah.
And it's a real neat process when you see a committee like that work together.
Any comments or questions or opinions?
Well,
Shout it out.
That'll also give us time. We'll need to plan for it because the cost will be, of course, higher, and depending on how many amendments that they recommend, they all have to be in Spanish. And the other deal is that every single proposition, say we want to recommend 11, and you all say, okay, we're going to go with all 11. That pamphlet or booklet will need to be mailed to every single registered voter in the city. So there'll be a publication.
What's the consensus? Y'all want to do this? Okay. All right, we would like to proceed with this, so I think the consensus would be to do it the way we did it quite a few years
Okay.
ago.
Do you want to bring your names back to the next meeting, or do
Yeah.
you want to wait 2 meetings?
Maybe, we got plenty of time, so maybe,
Let's
maybe,
wait 2 minutes.
maybe 2 meetings.
Okay.
And maybe we can get a little publicity for this in case some people are interested in it. We'll
Okay.
need to find a minimum
And I
of
just
11.
encourage you to reach out to the people that you know in community that And if anybody wants a list of the names that were on the committee before, just shoot me an email and I'll send you those.
That'd be good. You might email all of us that.
Okay,
That'd be
I'll do
useful.
that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, item number 20, future events. Anybody have anything to discuss or bring up for future events? If not, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Everybody knows.
Everybody's.